I'm Danielle with Integrative Arts and Medicine. Today we're going to be doing a writing practice, so you're going to need a piece of paper and something to write with. But it doesn't have to be anything special. You don't have to have a particular journal or anything. A scrap piece of paper is fine. Paper, pencil or pen, whatever you prefer, whatever you have around. I'm going to be using a little scrap piece of paper binder that I have that I use for grocery lists and whatever writing lists and activities that I need to write down. I personally love to write as a way of refocusing my mind, because I find when I'm conscious enough to notice that I'm replaying the same sort of scenario over and over in my head, if I sit down and just write almost a stream of consciousness or just write whatever's on my mind, it gets out of my mind. So we're going to do these practices today. We're going to do 2 practices today that are going to be timed. I think timing it is really important because it really gets your mind working. The timer will start and you might think, I don't have anything to write, but once it starts, it sort of forces you to get something down on the paper, even if you're like, I don't know what to write. And then that gets your mind flowing and working in a different capacity than just thinking about things. It's a different mindset and it's really interesting. What I want to focus on, though, is that the product isn't important. This is just for us. This is just for our mind's well-being and our body's well-being, refocusing and clearing the mind. So you don't have to worry about writing any sort of masterpiece today. The practice of doing the writing exercise is what is important. The practice is more important than the product. Okay? So go ahead and make sure that you have something to write with, and we'll get started. The first one that we're going to do is going to be a stream of consciousness writing. So this is just anything that comes to mind when the timer starts. So you don't have to have anything in particular. It could be a list of something that you have to do today. It could be just thoughts that pop into mind or any sensations that pop into mind. And really, there's no structure to it. The second one is going to be more structured, and then we'll compare and we'll see how we responded to each of them, essentially, how well we wrote with each of them, as far as like how the flow was, if it was easier one way or another, and if it left you feeling more relieved or maybe more anxious. So we want to compare so that you develop tools of what you can use, what works for you, and whatever works for you works. Okay, so get ready, and we're going to start the timer. Are you ready? Here we go. Okay, so how did that feel? Some people really like creating lists to help organize their thoughts and just kind of focus their mind. I personally like that, and I really like to scratch things out when I get things done. Also, if I'm just feeling really scattered, like let's say I have to walk into a meeting and I'm feeling really scattered, or let's say I come home from work and I had a kind of heavy day at the hospital and I don't want to bring that into my family life, then this kind of writing practice is really good for just sort of getting it all out on paper and letting it go. And a lot of times I just throw it away. It's just more about getting it out of my head and letting it go. But also sometimes things come up where you're writing down a stream of consciousness and then you're like, you know what, that came to mind. To like for right today, I was writing about how I was feeling a little anxious about coming up with a lot of music to play at a live that I'm doing tonight. And then I was like, you know what, but above all, I should just try to have fun. And there you go. Sometimes your mind surprises you with things that we should know all the time automatically. But sometimes it takes just working that out and having that reminder come out of yourself. So those are some ideas for that stream of consciousness writing. How did it make you feel? Did you notice if you had any sort of sensations of feeling maybe overwhelmed by, maybe if you were writing a list of things to do, maybe that made you feel overwhelmed, or maybe it made you feel more organized like it does for me. I'd like you to just recognize how that practice made you feel so that you can compare it to the next one. Now, that we're doing 5 minutes today, but again, like there's no right or wrong thing here. It's just about the practice of clearing the mind, refocusing the mind in a different way. So if 1 minute is good for you, if 10 minutes is good for you, it really just depends on your day and what fits in your day. And again, it's better to just do something than to worry about it being this perfect product, okay? So the next writing exercise we're going to do is going to be more of a nostalgic way of thinking. I'd like you to think of an aspect of your childhood that made you happy. So this could be a variety. You could think of maybe a thing that you had as a child that used to make you happy, or maybe a person in your life that used to make you feel good and happy. Maybe something that you used to do regularly as a kid that made you happy. Maybe a place you used to visit as a kid. Something like that. But the focus here is that we're choosing something that made you feel good, right? So we're not going to focus on the negatives here. We're going to try to focus on something that used to just make you feel good, and maybe something that will bring you back to some memories. So when you write this time, I'd like you to think about all of the senses associated with this aspect of your childhood. So how did it make you feel? Was there any sensation on the skin associated with this? Any smells or sounds or anything? Really just kind of let your mind go into the specifics about this aspect of your childhood. I'll give you an example. One for me that I was thinking of is when I was a kid, I grew up on a block that had a lot of empty lots on the water. So I would go out almost every day and just sit on the seawall and watch the water. I would watch the crabs, the little crabs scaling up the wall, and schools of fish going by, and just kind of the waves of the water and boats. And I would do that for hours, and I loved it. And I honestly can't remember the last time I just sat on a seawall. But the idea of doing that would automatically bring me back to my childhood. So that's an aspect of my childhood that's very specific to me, that if I choose to write about that now, I would have a lot of sensations and sort of sensory reminders from that experience. So that's the kind of thing I want you to think about, but it could be anything. It doesn't have to be an experience. It could be even a tangible object. Okay, so go back to your childhood for a couple minutes, and we're just going to write about it. And anything that comes to mind, it could be words, it could be whole sentences. It really doesn't matter. just let whatever happens, whatever comes to mind come out on the paper. Okay, are you ready? Timer's going to start now. Okay, so how did that one compare to the writing practice before it? If you take a couple of moments to read back on what you wrote in both practices, you might notice that the language changes, which is an interesting thing. Our brains automatically change our language in the second practice to be a little more descriptive, maybe a little more like floral, so to speak. And I think that that's a very interesting thing that happens to us automatically. And you might feel a little more relaxed after the second practice. I'm not saying that the first practice isn't good for just clearing the mind, but this second practice is reminding us of something positive in our lives that has happened, and it helps us to relive it. You might have had the sensation when you were thinking about this aspect of your childhood that your brain was almost back there. You might have had some really specific memories and aspects of the memories pop up, like colors and who you were with and what you all were wearing and what you were doing, and maybe any songs that were associated with it. It's interesting how our brains categorize memories, and when we go back there, we're almost able to relive it. And actually, in brain scans, it shows that when we do think about memories, they light up as if we're experiencing the moment at the time. So let's say you are in a brain scan and you are experiencing sun on your skin, and then you're asked at a later time to recall experiencing sitting with sun coming on your skin. Your brain lights up the same exact way. It's amazing. We are really powerful in our brains. So I encourage us to use that for a purpose. So you can think of categories of things that you love and enjoy and things that make you happy that are various. Let's say you just write about your favorite color or your favorite place you've ever visited. That's a good one. I like that one a lot. And maybe favorite family member's home, or maybe a specific memory at a family member's home, like, Easter at my aunt and uncle's house, something like that. Maybe favorite meal. That is interesting because when you're writing about your favorite meal, your stomach acids automatically start working more and you start getting saliva in the mouth because our brains are powerful. If I ask you to imagine somebody slicing a lemon right now and really imagine it and watch the knife slicing through the lemon and then bringing the piece of the lemon up to your mouth, your salivary glands are probably starting to produce saliva. It's because we have these recalled memories stored. So if we watch movies and things where we're experiencing a lot of action or tension, our bodies respond as if we're experiencing it with the movie. And that's why those things can be exciting or overwhelming. So you kind of choose. And instead of choosing a writing practice that's focusing on negative things, you can choose a writing practice that focuses on positive things that will make your brain respond as if you're experiencing it all over again. And that's not to say that writing about negative things is a bad thing, because it could release it from the body. Like I said before, with feeling overwhelmed about something, writing it down just helps me feel like I get it out of my head, so I'm not replaying it over and over and over and over again. I don't know if you do that as well, but I definitely do that, and I have to catch myself and stop myself somehow. So writing about negative aspects of life isn't a bad thing. It could help you work through it. But if you're looking for something to help you feel calm and relaxed, I really encourage picking a category of something that you love, something that makes you feel good, something that makes you feel relaxed, so that your brain responds to it and feels it just as if it's happening right then and there. I hope those were some interesting insights for you. Like I said, it doesn't have to be one certain way. You can play around with it and feel like, maybe 2 minutes is good for me every morning. Maybe it's good for me at the end of the day to clear my mind before bed. Maybe it's good for me in the middle of the day before I have to get back to work or back to do something productive, so that I just kind of go back into it with a clear focus. Something interesting that also happens with the brain is that these practices stimulate the prefrontal cortex, which is great for mindfulness. Meditation practices do the same thing. So this is essentially a mindfulness meditation practice. But the prefrontal cortex is also associated with executive decision making and our personality. That's why lobotomies back in the day were so devastating, because they just destroyed a person's complete personality. But when we stimulate the prefrontal cortex, it brings us back to the core of who we are and rational executive decision making. So it's really great for clearing the mind, refocusing the mind, and reminding us at the core of who we are. I hope that's helpful for you. Enjoy, play around with it. Let me know if you have any insights, and have a wonderful day.